Kevin Brennan, your mum was a dinner lady, your dad was a steel worker, you ended up doing PPE at Oxford. That's quite a journey. How did you make it?
Well, it was quite strange actually, because I wasn't predicted to do that brilliantly at school when I did my A-levels. I went to a Catholic comprehensive school in Wales, and my dad actually got me a job in the summer down at the steelworks when the results came out, and it was my turn to go to the canteen and get some sandwiches, and I phoned up the school and they said, you've got 3 A's in your A-levels, and I was hoping for a B and 2 C's, I think, or something like that to get into university. And I said, yeah, that's right, 3 A-levels, I'm doing 3 A-levels. I said, no, you've got 3 grade A's. So this actually happened. I went back to the gang, we were working out on site in the steelworks, and they said, how did you get on? And I said, well, they said, I got 3 grade A's. And one of them said, you ought to go to Oxford. And that was the first time anybody had ever said that to me. And that's absolutely true. I was sort of, 18 years old. And I thought to myself, well, why shouldn't I? If I've done that, where I come from. So that's when I applied, after I'd left school, and got in. So it was not the typical route, shall we say, for how it happens.
And Oxford, still a lot of private school kids at Oxford, but when you went, it would have been pretty overwhelming. Yeah,
the majority were from private schools. And so it was culturally, quite interesting. I did have, I think, temporary, they call it, there's a name for it these days, imposter syndrome, I suppose they call it these days, but I did for a kind of a short while think, did they get it wrong, my results, or, how did I get here and so on. But actually, I also had that thought, if I could get here, then I deserve to be here. And you quickly find out that far from everybody being a genius that you might think coming from a working class background who goes to a university like that, actually, yes, there are 0.01% geniuses out there, but the rest of them are just clever kids. Some of them not so clever, but who got there, because they've had a lot of the magic carpet ride in life. But so I pretty much felt quite quickly, I can do this, I can fit in here, and I ought to make the most of it while I'm here.
When did you know that you were Labour?
Well, I suppose when I was a teenager in school, I really started thinking a lot about politics. And actually, I have to confess, I joined the Young Communist League when I was about 15, along with the anti-apartheid movement. It was sort of that awakening of politics and that sense of injustice inside you, something's not fair. And I think I realised that a lot needed to be done to make society fairer and to make the world a fairer place. And I was a typical teenager who spoke out a lot, had opinions, had something to say, probably not that well thought through sometimes, and that you ought to try and do something about it. So I did that, and then as I got a little bit older, I thought, well, how can you really change things? And that's when I got involved with and joined the Labour Party as a teenager.
So we talked about your journey to Oxford. So not only are you going from your background to doing PPE, you then become president of the Oxford Union. Now, lots of our viewers, I mean, frankly, most of my mates wouldn't know the significance of that. But that is something that future prime ministers go on to do. It's a very, very elite position at Oxford. I've never been near the place, so tell me in your own words.
Well, I didn't know much about it at the time where I went there, but there was a big push to say, come and see this place. And obviously, this is where very senior figures, politicians, came to speak, and they had debates. And I thought, well, this is a place I should get involved in, without really even thinking about the elitism of it. But you're right, people dressed up in strange costumes, in sort of white tie and black tie and things like that. But that's not entirely alien if you come from a working class background. I mean, my dad never left the house to go to the club without putting a suit and tie on. So, I was used to that idea that you would dress for the occasion, And, I got invited to speak there, actually, because I was involved in the Fabian Society. It's a sort of Labour organisation of ideas, when I was in university. And being involved in that, I got invited to come and give a speech as a student speaker at the union. It was about private education, really. And I ranted on against private education, and Neil Kinnock was there from the Labour Party, and the headmaster of Eton was on the other side of the debate. And so it went down very well, and I got a good write-up in the student papers. And then a couple of people said to me, you ought to run for office in the union. And I thought, well, someone like me, it's highly unlikely. But in fact, I progressed through the system and ended up, so before me, someone viewers would know very well, William Hague was the president before me, and then the term after him, I was elected to be president of the union, and it's basically the chair of this big, prestigious sort of debating society where lots of people come to speak from all over the world, presidents, prime ministers, all sorts of people.
Did you know William Hague?
I did, yeah, no, I knew him quite well actually in university, and I got on okay with him. We were from very different political viewpoints, but both of us at the time, I think, when I was there and he was there, it was the time when the SDP started to emerge, the Social Democratic Party, and I think both he and I thought probably the best thing to do was to try and strangle that organisation at birth. So we had a kind of curious alliance, me from the Labour side, him from the Tory side, and so we actually politically always got on okay together. And when I became an MP, he was already an MP at that time and a government minister and so on, we sort of renewed that acquaintance. We're always on, affable terms, even if we were on the opposite sides of the political debate.
Were you there with anyone else famous, or your mates?
Blimey. Well, some of my mates who are MPs were there at the same time as me. For example, the twin sisters, Maria and Angela Eagle, were contemporaries of mine and from similar kind of backgrounds, really. Yeah. So we got on together. We were all involved in the Fabians, as I said, this group. And we were quite close mates when we were in university. So
was it William Hague that said that he used to be able to drink 14 pints or something? I can't remember, but that he was a big drinker.
Well, I think I'd be quite confident I could drink him under the table. Let's put it that way. He didn't mind, having a pint or two, and but he was never a big drinker. I think that was a bit of bravado when he was leader, trying to enhance his credentials with working class voters. But his father actually ran a pop business, as in
pop.
Drink.
Yeah.
Pop, fizzy drinks and so on in Yorkshire. And so he did, I think, work on his father's lorries in the summer holidays and things like that. But the rest of it, I think, is a bit of a legend.
You go on to become a school teacher. Any memorable pupils?
Well, actually, funnily enough, some of my pupils do turn up in all sorts of interesting places. One of them's a Conservative MP, which obviously means I was a hopeless teacher because she's ended up, on the other side in politics in the House of Commons. Nikki Aiken, who I think you've interviewed actually, who's the MP for the Westminster seat. But people, ring you up from time to time. I had a phone call after I became an MP from one of my pupils. Her name is Estelle Wilkinson, and she rang me up and congratulated me. I said, "Oh, what are you doing these days, Estelle?" She said, "Oh, I work in the music industry." I said, "What do you do?" She said, "Oh, I manage a band." I said, "What are they called?" She said, "Coldplay." And I said, "Oh, I think I've heard of them." She said, "I just want to say thanks for getting me my grade C in A-level economics, because that got me into university, and I wouldn't have met the people that I met to."
That's nice.
So it was lovely when that sort of thing happened. So you do bump into people in interesting places.
Which leads us on to music.
Yes.
When I know you're in a band now, you're in a band with other MPs. It's called MP4. When did you realise you had musical talents?
Well, I came from a half Irish, half Welsh household. My mother was born in Nantaglow in the Valleys, my father from West Cork. And we had a very musical household. My sister, my older sister, Nuala, her birthday was on Christmas Day, so she got a guitar one year for her birthday. She really wanted to have a guitar, and I started picking that up. And my father was the sort of person who kind of turn up with stuff sometimes, and they were throwing a piano out of the local workingmen's club, I think, at that time, probably replacing it with an organ or something. And he got his mates to wheel it home, and so we had a piano in the front room. And I didn't have any formal lessons, but we played, and we did used to have gatherings at home, and everybody would be expected to give a song, or if you couldn't sing, to recite something. It was a very much, kind of part of the culture in our household. I thought it was like that in every household. So at a young age, I started playing and singing and enjoying music. So I've always done that and written songs and been in groups and played in folk clubs and things like that. So when I came to Parliament, I didn't expect really to be that much involved in music. But then I met some other MPs who wanted to form a rock band, and that's how MP4 came about.
And you're from different parties, at the SNP,
we do,
the Conservative Party.
Yeah, so the band, one of them's no longer an MP. Ian Causey was the Labour MP for Brigg-and-Goole in Lincolnshire, and he lost his seat, but we didn't throw him out of the band. We thought it'd be a bit over the top, you know. And Greg Knight, who's a Tory MP, he's a drummer from East Yorkshire, and Pete Wishart, who's the Scottish National Party MP for Perth and North Perthshire. He was a bona fide, you know, rock star in that he played in a group called Run Rig for 18 years. They were on Top of the Pops. There was a recent Sky Arts documentary about them. So, you know, there was a lot of competence there. But it came about because of a conversation, would we be the first generation of MPs that would have those skills to be able to form a band? And we did, and we've done lots of stuff, particularly charitable stuff over the years.
Has it helped you to be in a band with people from different parties? Is it good for politics? Has it helped you do politics better? Does it humanise each other rather than screaming at each other across the chamber? I
actually think that sort of thing is important, as is having something outside of politics in your life. Because I think you know, some people are just completely you know, dominated by politics. They have no hinterland. I think it helps you understand what people's concerns are, and if you know, what their passions are, and so on. And it also helps you understand where other people are coming from in politics, and sometimes, you know, to find better solutions for things other than shouting slogans at each other. And, you know, the people in the band from different parties, we would disagree vehemently on lots of things about politics, but I would describe them as friends nevertheless. And I think it's possible, I think it's really important for all of us, you know, that it's possible to be friends with people you disagree with. And I think politics has become quite toxic sometimes these days. Maybe it's the influence of social media in people shouting at each other from their phones, but the ability to actually listen with your ears rather than just your mouth, I think is quite an important skill in politics.
Did you ever want to be a pop star, rock star?
Of course. Yeah, you know,
but I mean, did you ever try and be one?
Well, no. When I was a teenager, I played in bands and things like that. But and half thought for, you know, of going off with some of my mates in a van when we were in our teens, particularly when, you know, punk came about, when it seemed you could do it yourself.
Were you into punk?
Oh yeah, very much so. I saw the Clash. Never saw the Sex Pistols, although I'm quite friendly with one of the ex-Sex Pistols these days, a guy called Glenn Matlock, who used to play bass in the original lineup of the Sex Pistols. But I was very much into that, but I was also into things like folk music. I probably would have ended up in like the Pogues, you know, a combination of folk music and punk really would have been my ideal band to be part of. But, you know, when I did well in school and ended up going to university, I think that sort of, in my day, it was less heard of that you formed a band in university. You either went one way or the other, really, I think. So that immediately set me down more of a political road, really, and that was the passion I pursued more directly as a career.
Final question. So you said when you used to go to the Oxford Union, people got dressed up, very dressed up. You look smart today. But I read that in July 2002, you appear in the parliamentary chamber without a tie. You said that tie wearing in the chamber gives a besuited image that's male, pale and stale. I read that the Speaker asked you to leave the chamber because you weren't wearing a tie. And now look at you. Have you gone backwards or has Parliament gone forwards? And
well, the funny thing was, many years later, John Bercow said it was okay not to wear a tie. But now we've gone back under Lindsay Hoyle. Now he says, you know, he'd like you to wear a tie again.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So it's gone back and forth quite interestingly. To be honest, at the time, I think I was just trying to grab a bit of attention. so they used to have business questions every week, and you could raise anything. And I didn't have anything to raise, so I thought I'd do that. And Robin Cook, the late Robin Cook, sadly no with us, sort of said, no longer with us, said, well, I look forward to seeing what he's wearing next week. So the following week, I did turn up without a tie, as requested, and that was the outcome. So anyway, I've learnt the error of my ways.
And do you get told, like, I can't remember because I'm not sure women, well, I suppose we must be told when I was an MP, we must have been told sort of formal dress, and I think maybe we know that's meant. But are you explicit, a male MP is explicitly told you have to wear a tie?
There was a missive issued last year that standards had slipped, I think by implication during John Bercow's reign, but the excuse that was given was during the time when we had Zoom Parliament for a while because of the pandemic, and that, you know, male MPs were reminded they should wear jacket and tie, and that female MPs were reminded that they should dress smartly. I think there's a looser interpretation of that, but of course, you know, women get it in the neck so much in terms of what they wear. It's ridiculous. Nobody's, you know, if people listen to what they say, that's far more important. Although I have to say, my mother, who's still alive in her 90s, you know, whenever she sees me on Parliament, the first thing she usually says is, "You look nice." So that's why I've got a tie on, really.
Kevin Brennan, it's been a pleasure. Keep wearing that tie.
Thank you.